Hi, everyone. It's Jane Muskie from Equity Through Design Mentorship. Welcome to our first guest panel of 2023. We have a wonderful panel today, and the topic is, what is our union, United Scenic Artists A29? And we're basically going to be talking about how to apply, what the categories are, why a union, why we all love our union. Patrice Davidson, Elizabeth Popiel, and Mackenzie Murphy are going to be running the meeting. And Elizabeth is going to be doing our usual DJing in the Q&A. So we'll let her talk for a sec once we get through the land acknowledgement. She'll give you the rules and regulations for submitting your questions. I do want everyone to know that our next panel is on February 18th, and it's a little bit geared toward our high school audience. And we're going to put together a group that's going to present some ideas for colleges and apprenticeships, different ways of thinking about your future, with a focus on becoming a designer, the skills needed, portfolio development. So that'll be on February 18th, and we'll be sending out email blasts about that. And again, I don't want everyone to forget that we do have our YouTube channel, which is accessible on the ETDM website, but also Elizabeth is going to put the address in the chat room for you. And remember, the YouTube has all of our guest panels that have been recorded. And there's so many different subjects we've touched on at this point. So if you're new to the program, it's a really good sort of Sunday afternoon listen to a bunch of really skilled people talking about our professions. So what I'd like to do at this point is introduce Isabel Rubio, who's going to read our land acknowledgement. And then after that, I'll introduce you to Elizabeth and Patrice.
Hello, I'm Isabel Rubio, and we wish to respect to the many Indigenous people of New York's ancestors. Oh, sorry. We pay respect to ancestors past, present, and future, starting with the Lenape people, not limited to the Merrick, Canarsie, Rockaway, Manoticut, Munsee, Six Nations, and the acknowledgement that this city and nation were founded in the exclusion and erasures of many indigenous people and cultures and stories. Additionally, the foundation of the city and many of its original buildings were funded by the sale of enslaved people of African descent. Back to you, Jane.
Great. So I'm going to introduce you to Patrice and Elizabeth, who will start the program. And Patrice will say hi, and then Elizabeth just explain the Q&A process.
Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have two wonderful guest panelists, and I'll read a little something about who they are once Elizabeth gives you our protocol for today's meeting. Elizabeth, take it away.
Hi. So, folks, you're going to have questions. We know that. Wait just a second, because it might be answered, or you can always come back into the chat and say, I'm good, or something like that. But what you want to do is, rather than address them to everyone, try to address it to me. I'm about to put in the ETDM website, and then you'll know who I am. But if you put it to all, that's okay also. But what we'll do is at the end, I'll find some kind of an order to ask the questions of our moderators or perhaps Patrice. And that's about it. Just be patient and try to ask your question in a very simple, short way. That's all. And if you have other questions, we have other people that might answer those also. All right. So enjoy the program today, Patrice.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Welcome back,
end.
everyone.
Bye.
Yes. All right. So today I'm going to introduce to you two wonderful individuals who are part of our union. I'm going to start with Grace Baxter. A little bit about Grace. Grace says she was lucky enough to stumble upon scenic art during her high school theater class, which led her to North Carolina School of the Arts, where she graduated with her BFA in scenic painting. She's been working as a scenic artist for 20 years. Many of those are non-union scenic in the regional theater and performance world. Since joining the union, Grace has made it made it a goal to make our union a less opaque and more equitable space by getting involved in the admissions committee and the Scenic Artists Best Practice Committee our union recently formed. She's excited to be here today to help shed some light on our union and the pretty awesome profession of scenic painting. And I'm going to read a little bit about Natalie Robin. Natalie Robin, she is a Philadelphia-based lighting designer, educator, and organizer whose design works focuses on new American plays and musical, contemporary dance, and site-specific performance. She believes that design is a dramaturgy of an interest and interested in how she's interested in how degenerative text for work can be found in movement as much as in language. Her work expresses emotional narratives through the light as an inferior and time-based medium. She uses the she and her pronouns, and she loves musicals. She is a full-time staff organizer of United Scenic Artists, IATSE Local 829, USA 829, from whom she served as the Secretary Treasurer of the Eastern Region. She aims to advocate for transparency, inclusion, and deepening organizing within the union and community. She currently is part of the New York State AFL-CIO/Cornell Workers Institute Union Leadership Institute and is the class of 22. Please welcome Grace Baxter and Natalie Robin. We're going to start with Grace. And Grace, if you can just tell us a little bit about why union for us as an artist.
Well, as I mentioned, I worked non-union for many years, and one of my greatest frustrations really was getting paid. So, and one of the main reasons I joined the union was because not only did I want to make a living wage, I wanted to have someone at my back when I had a wage dispute. You know, there are many times that I waited for checks when I was a non-union person for months, and just kind of would have to call and hope for the best. But besides that, really it's the quality and craftsmanship of our craft, and knowing that I had learned a lot in my non-union career, but I'd kind of plateaued, and in order to kind of continue to grow as an artist and as a craftsperson, I wanted to be around people who knew so much more than I did, and that really the only place for that was the union. So yeah, so that really kind of motivated me to take the plunge, because it is kind of a big step, but I really felt after doing the non-union world for so long, I had kind of earned my chops and had the had done the hard work, and could kind of make that leap.
Okay, thank you, Grace. I appreciate what you just said, and that is so important for many of us who are artists. Now I'm going to ask Natalie the same question. Why union as an artist?
Well, I think that I don't think it's a different answer for artists or non-artists. I think that when we're living inside of capitalism, all workers deserve the support that they get from a union. You know, our union benefits include, as Grace said, support around pay. They also include guaranteed wages, and things like health insurance and pension. But more than anything else, a union offers community and solidarity. And so when faced with any kind of unsafe or unfair working conditions, you're never alone. And there's always people who share the same goals and priorities that you do.
Awesome, thank you. One other question I would like to ask, what is there a correct pathway to membership, the union membership, or is there many avenues? And can you, each one of you, either or, can talk a little bit about that and what that means and how that looks, what that looks like?
You want to go first, Natalie?
Sure. There are 3 big pathways to membership into 829. The first is what we call professional membership. That means that you get hired to work on a show or a movie that has what's called a security clause in the contract that says that all of the folks working on that show or movie can and should be union members. And so in that case, you write a letter to the business office with proof of employment and send in a check and get voted into membership. The second pathway to membership is through what we call an exam process, which in the live performance design categories is actually more like an interview / portfolio presentation. And I'll let Grace talk a little bit about what it looks like in scenic artists because it's slightly different. And then the third path of membership is if you are working on a project or for an employer who is organized via the union. So for example, we've recently organized the scenic artists at the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis. That was not a union scenic shop. And now everyone who is working in that shop has become a union member without having to go through the other paths to membership. But I'll let Grace talk more about the scenic artist exam process.
Yeah, the scenic artist exam process has three forms of entry. The first step, or the first, I guess, tier is apprenticeship, which that is a 3-year program where the apprentices take classes on the weekends, on Saturdays, and then work during the week and get paid a wage. Should I go into the actually what the exam kind of entrance is? Is that too in the weeds?
You can touch bases on it so they have a sense of expectations. Yes,
Okay.
sure.
So for the apprenticeship program, you have there's an exam, like a written exam, and then there's an interview, and you do a portfolio review, and you make some samples, and your final piece is to paint a small, like I think 1.5 by 1.5 foot painting in 7 hours. You're given a 7-hour time frame to do it, and you do it in a room with everyone else doing the same piece. And you are judged on each of those categories, and depending on, you know, I think it's usually around 15, the 15 top performing people get in. The track B is very similar. It has another written exam. You do an interview, you do some examples of work at home, like a wood grain and a marble. And then you have a practical exam where you paint, I think it's like a 4 by 5 foot piece, again in a room with usually around 10 to 15 other people doing the same project. And again, the cumulative score of the people who do the best on that. And there's no minimum requirement of those number of people, but the people who generally do the best go on to become initiated members, union members are accepted. And then there's a third final step, which is the track A, which is for people who have more than 3 years of professional experience. And that is basically a portfolio review and interview. You bring your resume, you bring a portfolio of your work, you bring samples that are requested. That's like a wood grain and marble, a large drop, like 4 by 5-ish feet, and a couple things that you can select in a drawing. And you bring those, and you're interviewed by 5 professional union members, union scenics, and for about 20 minutes, and then they vote yay or nay on whether or not you're prepared and ready for membership. And if they say yes, you are become a member. That's a very brief, and I'll send some documents about a little bit more in depth about what that all means as well.
Awesome. I think, Natalie, we want to talk about the different categories. Currently, how many categories do we have offer in terms of union membership in our union? I think it's.
We have 11.
Okay.
If it's okay, I'm going to share my screen.
Oh, yes, sure.
So
Please do.
Folks can
Yes,
see this
please do.
list.
Yes.
While I talk through it. So you should all be able to see this now. So we have 11 categories of membership. Some of our members can work in either live performance or film, and some are one or the other. So working from the top, these are just in alphabetical order. Art and costume department coordinators are primarily film folks. They are the people who keep the art department or the costume department on budget. They maintain a lot of spreadsheets and a lot of organization about how and when everything needs to be done in order to get a project finished in time. Computer artists are the often considered the graphic designers of film and TV. Costume designers design costumes for either or both live performance or motion pictures. Industrial members are a category of membership which, for the most part, is connected to scenic artists and are folks who, and Grace, please jump in and tell me when I'm wrong, but sort of assist and work with scenic artists, but aren't doing the actual high quality painting.
Yeah, they're basically our help.
Yeah. The staff, most of the staff members of the union are also join as industrial members. Projection designers, lighting designers are, and sound designers are all working exclusively in live performance. So plays, musicals, operas, dance, etc. Grace talked a little bit about being scenic artists and the Scenic Artist Apprentice program, and then scenic designers who you will know as scenic designers in film, in live performance, in film and TV. They're sometimes called scenic designers and sometimes called production designers and sometimes called art directors, but the category of membership still falls under scenic designers. Yeah. Does that help, Patrice?
Most definitely, and sound designers, of course.
Yeah.
Yes. So my other question now, I want to ask, is there a particular waiting period for anyone to be part of the union? How do I know when I'm ready? Is there any advice that you can possibly give me as a young person just coming out of school? I may be kind of scared a little bit, for whatever reason. Is there any suggestion of how I can prepare, or is there a way to prepare? Any of those questions you can touch on.
Well, actually, one of the things I should have explained too with the different tracks of exams for the scenic artists is that the apprenticeship is meant for people with very little scenic experience, if not any at all, that have some artistic background. So that's really what we want to put people who want to be trained in scenic art, while working as a scenic artist. Track B is meant for people who have less than 3 years of experience and wouldn't qualify for the Track A exam. So that's why it has that practical exam quality. So you're actually painting in front of people, but also meant for people who, maybe just came out of university or school and don't have that full professional scenic background. And then the Track A is, of course, for professional people who've been working for more than 3 years outside of university. But that said, so we have a little bit of that tier system within our exam process, but I think we definitely, as on the admissions committee, have tried to make sure that people who are working in the industry have a pathway into a union membership.
Yeah, I'll second that to say, if you're interested in joining as a live performance designer, I often encourage my students to wait a little bit of time after they graduate from undergrad or grad school. Do some work, make sure this is really what you want to do. In the current exam process, which is the cheapest way to join, we should say also, you do need to present a portfolio of work in any of the categories. And so you want to make sure that you've had some time to build up that portfolio outside of just your work in school. But once you're working and being paid as a designer, you should start to think about your process for joining. I would say for most folks, something like 3 years of professional work will give you the kind of portfolio that is helpful. But that's not a hard and fast rule. There are folks who are ready to join after a year and folks who want to take a little bit longer.
Awesome. That sounds wonderful. So now I'm in the union. I'm ready to work. How do I find work, or is there? I'm sure there's no specific way, but is there a way that I can somehow matriculate or navigate through all of the union's processes in terms of finding work? What does that look like, and what is it like for you when you started?
Well, for me, the union has a film and TV report, and that's pretty useful for scenics who want to work in film and TV, obviously. because it lists generally who the scenics are, who the charge is, and sometimes their contact information. But really for scenics, it's a lot of networking. So as you work on jobs, you get to know people, and you exchange information, and you really, it's really about getting to know people, them getting to know you, and making sure that you're putting yourself out there. So contacting people when you need work, or, when you're working, you're obviously put on your best face so you can, people will be willing to give you their contacts, and yeah, and that's kind of how you build a career, really.
Yeah, I think to build off of what Grace is saying, we're not what's called a hiring hall, which means that employers don't call the union office as they might if they're looking for stagehands. They might call a stagehand local, or if you're working in another kind of trade union, like they might call if an employer needs a bunch of electricians or a bunch of masons or something. So employers don't call 829 and say, hey, I'm doing a show and I need a set designer, a lighting designer, and a sound designer. We mostly get our work, as Grace said, through networking, through who we know, through professional contacts. However, we do have an availability list for scenic artists that is kept by the office. And so any of the scenic artists who are looking for work can put themselves on the availability list, and that is shared with employers who are looking for scenic artists. And the website also lets us, there's a member search function, and we can self-identify in any category as available to work. And so that means that folks can, employers could look at the website and search for all available set designers. And if people have updated their information, that information is available to them. But that's not really how we get hired for the most part.
Awesome. So this is a little bit of a unusual question. So I'm just getting out of school, looking for work. I'm a scenic artist or scenic painter. And I happen to know someone who actually works for the film and television industry, but I'm not in the union yet. Is there a way I can probably still get on their crew without actually being in the union, and find my way and sort of network and grow and all the things you said before, because networking is important. Does the union encourage that, or is there some navigating of that process?
That's a great question. Yes, there absolutely is. It's called the Skilled Non-Members List. And it's meant for people who have a little bit of scenic experience or some related scenic experience, like mural artists, or even people who have done like wall prep and painting in houses. Anybody who has kind of if you have done scenic painting in college, or have any, I guess, did community theater, even any of that. But we have that you'd email a resume, some 10 to 20 images of related work, and a little blurb about yourself, and we can get you on what's called the Skilled Non-Members List. And when the members available in our union, when there are not enough members available in our union of scenic artists, and we need kind of overhire help, charges can go to the Skilled Non-Members List and hire off of that. We also, if you know somebody in the union and you are, even if you don't get on this auxiliary list, Skilled Non-Members List, if you get hired on a union job, you are allowed to be on a union job. There is no problem doing that, and the union will never, stand against you, or that you'll not be disparaged for doing that. So yeah, if you're lucky enough to get a union job, then you're lucky enough to get a union job, and make contacts and get some experience and apply to join the union. And I can put that email address in the chat as well.
That'd be awesome. So, I'm fresh out of college still. I'm still a newbie, and I'm considering joining the union. But once I start working, are there any benefits really in terms of for my future once I join that it's more of a longer lasting endeavor, sort of like pensions or healthcare benefits, those things that, because we hear a lot about starving artists. So as a union, we try to make sure that the artist is not truly starving, but find a way that they can continue on and have a healthy life. So is there a process of that as well?
Yeah. So we have access to health benefits and access to several forms of retirement benefits, which I'm not going to get into a lot of detail about. But the short answer is that every time you work on a show under a union contract, either under what we call a collectively bargained contract, which is a contract between an employer or group of employers and the union, or under a project only agreement, which might be a contract between just you and an employer, but under the auspices of the union. The employer makes a contribution to both your, what we call the welfare fund, which is health insurance, and to your pension fund. In order to qualify for health insurance, you have to hit a sort of base level, which equals the cost of the insurance for a quarter. So that number changes. But once you hit that number, you can sign up for the union health insurance and you can get health insurance. And that continues as long as you continue to make money through the union. It's a little more nuanced than that, but that's the short answer. We have a pension fund, which works in a similar way. Once you have 5 consecutive years of the minimum number of dollars in your pension fund, then you are called then you are considered what's called vested in the pension, which means that you, from the time you retire until you die, you are guaranteed a certain amount of dollars every month. And that pension is based on how much money you make after you have vested for 5 years. We also have access to a 401k and some other forms of retirement funds that I'm not going to go into because you are all very far from retiring. But the short answer to Patrice's question is there are those kind of financial benefits to union membership. As a union member, you also benefit from both working under a collectively bargained agreement and access to the legal support of the union. We also, as a local, provide something called the Member Assistance Program, which is a collaboration with the Entertainment Community Fund, which provides mental, psychological, and physical health access for members, financial planning, legal support, social workers, access to financial planning, access to long-term health and medical concerns. Through the union, there's also what's called a death benefit, which means that if you pass away, your family gets $1.50 from every active member of the union. Right now, that means that they would get about $8,000. And there's a variety of other similar ways that our members are supported by the local. But as I said at the beginning, one of the ways is that you can call someone and ask for help. And as Grace said, you can call and say, I haven't been paid, please help me get paid, and they will.
Wow. So it seemed like there is a lot of benefits to actually being part of a union. That seems, at least to me, that's what the consensus is. But I have one other question, and then we can probably switch over to questions that individuals may have. So I just got into the union. Of course, no one knows me, but I've been offered a job for a theater that doesn't have a collective bargaining agreement with the union. How do I navigate that? Because sometimes producers don't want to pay that pension and welfare. Is there a way that I can possibly, well, first of all, you got to eat. So if you offer a job that doesn't really is not covered, should I still take the job, or how can I figure out if there's a pathway to even still take the job because I need to eat? I don't want to turn it down because it's not covered. So is there an answer to that possibly that we can find with the union can maybe help out in some way?
The short answer is that the union will never tell you to not take work. So you can decide to take non-union work at any point. you won't get any of those financial benefits I was just talking about. But if your friends are producing a show in their basement and you really want to work on it because you really love the play, like by all means, do the play. And if you are in a position to be able to ask the producers of the play to sign what's called a union project agreement or project only agreement, that would allow them to make contributions on your behalf to both the health fund and the pension fund. But the union will never tell you that you're not allowed to take work. We want our members to be healthy and working. Ideally, you're always taking union work because that union work provides you both access to health insurance and retirement plan funds, and also to all the benefits of protection of the union. If you're a union member and you do a non-union project, it's really hard for the union to help you if something goes wrong. So we want to be able to help you. But if you want to do a project, and there's a million reasons why you might choose to do a project that could be covered work, but maybe isn't, we won't stop you.
But I think you're also supposed to report to the office that you're doing a non-union job just so they can kind of keep track of what work is out there. And if maybe they want to unionize that shop because they're hiring, or that, job because they're hiring a lot of union members, and it should maybe be a union job.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you.
I keep hearing the term covered work. What does that mean? I don't know what that means at all. Can you tell me?
Thanks, Patrice. Covered work. So every union has a jurisdiction, which is the work that union or local is legally allowed to represent. And our covered work in United Scenic Artists is all designed for live entertainment in America, any of the 50 states plus Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. and Guam, as well as all film and television and commercial work, design work, scenic artist work, and computer artist work on the East Coast in a somewhat limited geographic range, which I can't tell you entirely off the top of my head, but is roughly New England to Washington, D.C. and west to Buffalo. So if you are doing a play, a musical, a dance, or an opera piece, or a concert in anywhere in the US, it could be considered covered work. And if you are doing film or television in the sort of Northeast, roughly, that also could be considered covered work. We also do some film in the Midwest that is we only cover costume design on those films. There's some like weird nuances, but does that help, Patrice?
Yes, indeed. So I have a better understanding of what covered work is. In the essence of time, I think it's like 10 after 6 right now, and I think it may be a good opportunity to ask Elizabeth if there are any questions that came in, so any of our guest panelists can answer, or maybe some of our professionals here.
Yes. Oh, hi, Jane.
Wait, can I interrupt for 1 sec? Could we share the union website before we go into the Q&A? And
yeah, we actually did in the chat, but we'll put it in again.
I mean, open it in our meeting now to show our participants how to navigate.
USA829.org.
No, open it, share the screen of our.
I can do that if that's helpful, Jane. I will say that there's a lot of stuff on our website, so I'm not going to go through all of it, but I can share.
And then there's that old member only part.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not going to show you that. Yeah. So you should be able to see the 829 website. As Jane or Elizabeth said, it is USA829.org. You'll see that it features a rotating display of work of our members. And then at the top, there's these different categories. For you as not pre-members or not yet members, the About Our Union section is going to be really helpful. This includes general information about the union, as well as how to join and the benefits of membership. You can see here, there's this member search function, which is what I was referring to before, that you can look up different members of the local. And then you can access some information about our benefits plans as a non-member, and some information about the health and safety things that we provide. I didn't say this in the why join a union, but We provide extensive courses in health and safety for workplace environments, as well as access to the larger international library of training. And we offer classes in anti-racism and anti-bias training. So when you come to the website, all of these top menus will help you find out more information about what you're looking for. Jane, I hope that answers your question.
Jane had to slip out, but I know that
Oh,
that
great.
answered her question. So that's
Great.
great. Again, I'm Liz, you guys. I just wanted to add one thing to what Natalie said about the benefits, a personal note, if that's okay. The union also enables you when you are doing covered work to put into a 401k, which is your choice. Well, I just have to share with you guys, because I did that while starting to work at ABC television many years ago. Our union also has a clause in that 401k agreement that you can purchase a first home and withdraw the money, not all of it. So long story short, I was able to buy a house, which was, it's unheard of, a house or a condo. It's unheard of for us theater people. And I was able to do it, a little older in life, but that 401k is amazing because I only put a little bit in and it grew. So it isn't one more benefit. Okay, questions, and please feel free.
Can I do a personal moment too?
Yes, please do, David, and then I have a few questions. Go for it.
A number of years ago, I suddenly lost a use of my drawing hand. My drawing hand went completely numb, and ultimately what we found out is that I had MS. I was very lucky in that I had relapsing remitting MS, and I've never had a relapse since that original attack, but I found myself in a position where I was hospitalized for a little while and then really kind of couldn't use my drawing hand, my main tool, and had to kind of relearn how to be able to work with that sort of numbness and stiffness in my hand. And there's a sick benefit through the union that everybody pays into. And the union helped cover my expenses for a couple of months while I was unable to take any jobs because I was a member. And so, yeah, there's a number of these things that you don't often even think about, but the union's even potentially there to cover you if you end up in a medical emergency and get in trouble and you can't work.
Great. Anybody else want to share anything before I go to some of the questions we got? Okay, the first question was the most recent one in, and then I'll go to some other ones. Carol wants to know, is the apprenticeship program open right now? Because the dates on the apprenticeship say 2020/2021. So Natalie, maybe you could address that.
Yeah, I mean, we're not accepting current applicants for the apprentice program, but we will be probably next year.
Yeah, so every 3 years.
So she
It's every
should
3
keep
years.
checking. Oh,
Yeah,
every
she
3
should-
years.
Yeah,
And-
so I think they opened the application for about a year before the next one. So if it's 2021 was the last one, so it'll be 2020. Wait, yeah, it'll be 3 years from. No, it was 2020 when they did the last class. So it'll be 2023 when they start that next class.
Yeah, so sometime this year, that information will get updated.
Very good. So
I should
Carol,
also
take note.
Say that we do have we are reopening the St. Louis apprentice program, which has been inactive for a while. There's one open slot this year, but hopefully that will also be back in rotation in a more significant way.
Great.
If you move to the Midwest.
The same person that asked that question wanted to know about the industrial membership. I'm not sure if that's paint shop industrial but you can probably address that.
Yeah, so in the industrial membership is a little bit, probably the most opaque, hard to get any information on in our union. And unfortunately, our industrial members kind of prefer it that way because it is it's a little bit, it's easy to get into, and they are worried about everyone kind of swamping that list or whatever. But the industrials are basically the scenic artist assistants. They do a lot of cleaning, organizing. Some of them do payrolls. A lot of them do ordering, picking up stuff, and they do you can do any of the prep work that is not seen on screen. So yeah, so we do all the finished work. Scenic artists do all the finished work. I wish I could tell you a way to apply for industrial membership, but the only way to become an industrial right now is to get work as an industrial. So if you know anyone in the union that you can contact about getting that work, I would say do it, because all you have to do is work 30 days as an industrial and you can become an industrial member. And then there are special clauses in the Track A exam for industrial members, so people who've worked as an industrial, to kind of have a slightly easier path to becoming a union member, because it takes into account that they have maybe not had as much hands-on experience, but have obviously seen the process, have been very involved, are also very connected and knowledgeable, and deserve kind of like that little leg up into becoming a union member, or a scenic artist union member.
It's probably worth mentioning that the industrial category exists for folks who are sort of who are working but not as qualified as our scenic artists, or who are considered sort of they're considered non-fully beneficial members, which is a weird phrase, but it does mean that their dues are slightly lower than full member dues, and that means they receive some slightly different benefits. That again is like very complicated and not hugely different, but because of that, there's not an exam process. It's only through professional, the professional membership track.
Thank you, Natalie. This is an interesting question because I'm not sure how one would answer it. Does the union allow me to be creative?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. The union doesn't. Go ahead, Grace.
Yeah, I think I do creative stuff. I get handed all kinds of problems every day. Even though a designer designs it, I have to figure out how it actually will be made. And, just the amount of, knowledge of products and, possibilities of how to execute something. It's just like, I don't know, it's really kind of cool that you can just, there's a lot of ways to do a lot of creative things. And every way has its like benefits or downsides. So.
Yeah, the union doesn't have any say in what we do once we're at work. The union's job is to protect us while we're at work, which in some cases does include protecting our intellectual property rights and the, in fact, ability to be creative. I have a colleague who designed the scenery for a show, and it was reviewed very well, and there were a lot of photographs available about the show. And about 8 months later, a tiny theater, maybe 2 hours from where he lived, did the same show with scenery that looked really a lot like his scenery. And he saw a newspaper article about it, and he sent information to the union, and the union lawyers called and with a cease and desist order to the theater because they had stolen this designer's work. And ultimately they paid him for his work, and was, it resolved itself well. But one of the things that the union is doing in that case is actually protecting our creative work.
I always wondered about that. Thank you.
Yeah, if you can prove it, if you can show evidence that it looks like your work, the lawyers will call.
Somebody asked an interesting question, which I can answer part of. It says, how much does the application cost and how much are the dues? I think my dues right now are about 104 a month, every quarter. Sorry. But Natalie, or Grace, you have more information about the application, which varies, and the dues.
So it costs, I'm going to say a scary number, and then I'm going to say a lot of less scary numbers. The full price of membership to join the local is $3,500. The only people who pay that amount are folks who join via professional membership. So if I got hired to design a Broadway show and I wasn't a union member, I would have to pay $3,500 to join. And it's fine because you make a lot of money on those contracts, and it's okay. If you are joining via the exam process, there's a rebate. And so the exam process costs you $500. It's $300 to in sort of application fees, and then $500 to join. So it's $800 over a period of time. And our base dues right now, if no one dies in a quarter, are $120. That number then goes up. You pay 2% of all of your income on a union contract. So if you design a show, then you will pay 2% of whatever your fee is, or your weekly salary. And that might be taken out of your weekly, like it might be taken out of your check along the way, or you might be responsible for it at the end. And we do pay a death benefit, so that shifts based on how many members pass away in a given quarter, which is sad to say, but that is how it works.
And I will say that at least the scenic artist documents don't reflect that change right now for the exams. But it is, yeah, it's we need to change our documents, but it does not say that right now. So.
But it is on the basic website that I posted earlier. The how to join website does show those new numbers. So those are the real numbers.
Yeah.
I wanted to add to what they're saying. I, for instance, have worked at ABC television since 1996. Every single paycheck, I think it's 1.5% of my gross goes into my pension and welfare. But I'm telling you, I'm getting ready for retirement, and that's looking pretty good. Thank you, Natalie and Grace. I think that answered that question. We have a good question here that I think some of our other mentors that are present tonight might also answer, but we'll hear from Grace and Natalie first. It says, where do I learn to paint as a scenic artist if my school does not offer this skill? There's no more Lester Polikoff studio. You're all too young to even remember that, but you must have ideas on where people can get proper training.
There are several places. There's Cobalt Studios in upstate New York, and they actually they do a training. It's like you can do weekend trainings, or you can do actually like, I think they have like a couple-year program, and they actually have this cool old house that you can live in while you're there. So that actually takes care of some of the costs.
I hear Rachel bakes too.
Yeah. She might be retiring soon, but. And then there is Scenic Art Studios on the Hudson Valley does classes, and I can try to find that link actually too. I'll send both.
I can put that in the chat. I'm already putting Cobalt Studios.
Yeah. And then our union will our union, if you do end up working under any union contract, we have classes, scenic arts classes will be coming available for anyone who has worked under the contract in any way. So those will be available hopefully in March. So.
And if you're starting even before that, like I took a lot of art classes through various art schools. I went to a liberal arts program that didn't have a great art school. And so in order to get into grad school, I needed to be able to draw and paint better. And so I took a lot of classes at the School of Visual Arts, which at the time were pretty inexpensive, as well as at some community colleges. The CUNY schools often offer classes that you can take for a pretty, like if you're not trying to get a degree and you just want to take a class, they're pretty inexpensive. And the Art Students League still offers classes, which might... No, go ahead, Grace.
There's also the Guild of Scenic Artists that has, classes.
Free membership. It's a lot of fun to be part of that. You're right, Grace.
Yeah, and they do list jobs too. So they have a good job portal for like, especially I think summer stock jobs are probably going up now. And summer stock is actually a great way to learn the practical side of it. And usually summer stocks will put you up. So they might not pay you a lot, but they will give you housing for the summer.
I started to say the same thing, like learn by doing, learn on the job, essentially. And a summer festival that I regularly work at, Contemporary American Theater Festival, is basically mounting 6 full-scale shows. And they've got a scenic art team of about 5 generally, and several of those folks are interns who are making a stipend that's basically covering their basic living expenses, and they get put up, but they're just learning the entire time, because they're doing everything from base coating up to faux finishes, and just that sometimes having to speed through that work in a summer stock setting really teaches you a lot and really starts honing your skills quickly.
And for those of you who are interested in things other than scenic artists, summer stock is also a great thing. And then there's also like, there's a group called SPAM, which is the Society of Props Artisans in New York. They offer classes in everything from like special effects and like blood and stuff like that, through fake food, and also all kinds of like prop making things. And most of their classes are either free or I think $10. There's also the Studio School for Design, which is mostly lighting design classes, also in the sort of $10-ish range. I can put their website in the chat. And there's just a lot of kind of ad hoc or a la carte training options that exist out there. And I also will say, and David, I'm sure you say this too, but you don't necessarily, if you're applying to college now, if you're coming out of high school, you don't necessarily have to have those skills. Often what you have to have is the desire to develop those skills. And some, at least when I was running a VFA program, I was more interested in people who were interested in visual storytelling than people who were amazing painters, because we can teach you how to paint. But if you're not interested in the visual storytelling, then they're sort of not really like, I don't know. I can't teach you how to care about that. But once you care about it, we can teach the practical skills. So that is also potentially helpful.
Also for our young people, along the lines of what Natalie said, take pictures of everything, good pictures. You never know what's going to get you a job down the road. I had done all these marble samples. I just was having fun. And then I went, wait a minute, I think I need these, and I started taking really good pictures, and it made a difference different times. Other questions? Put them in the chat. Jane had to leave, but she told me to make sure I told everyone before we wrap up that if you want to know more about the union, please feel free to go to the ETDM website. And you should all have that from all of our emails, and we'll be happy to answer them. Jane said she will personally find the answer for you and get back to you. And we thank you for coming today. And Patrice, you want to use the next 5 minutes for any closing inspiring remarks?
Yes. Be passionate about what you do, because your passion will definitely lead you to where you ultimately need to be. And I just so much want to thank Grace and Natalie for your unselfish dedication, for spending Saturday afternoon explaining the process of something that's very, very beneficial to all of us who are artisans in any fashion. Thank you, guys. I truly appreciate you taking the time.